Welcome to the Project Endure podcast, the place where we talk about life, endurance, persistence, perspective, and so much more. I'm Joe Rinaldi, and I'll be your host. Let's jump in. Before we get started, let me just say that we get it. Personal development can be hard, but you don't have to do it alone. Project Endure has been on a mission to create a supportive and inspiring community of people, all striving to be better together. Head down to the link in the show notes and join the Hard Things Club so that we can do hard things together. And if you're already a member, invite a friend and spread the love. Now, let's get to the episode. Welcome back to the Project Endure podcast, episode 77. We have myself, Joe Rinaldi, and we have a very special guest in the state of Maine, Jenni Laferriere. Jenni, how are you?
I'm great, Joe. How are you?
I'm doing great. I was telling you before we recorded, one, I've been looking forward to this. Two, you are my first guest from Maine. And three, that might have been one of the more challenging last names to pronounce. Just to make sure I got it right, why don't you introduce yourself, full name and everything, and tell the audience a little bit about who you are to kick us off?
Yeah, so it is a tough name. There's countless times I remember people adding like extra R's in it, and it's not. So my name is Jenni Laferriere. I'm 26 years old. I'm originally from Vermont, and I grew up there, lived in the same house my whole life. And when I went to college at the University of New England, which is in Biddeford, Maine. Met my wife Zoe there, and she is originally from Maine, so we live about 15 minutes from where she grew up, and now we're in Maine. I'm a strength coach, and I primarily work with high school and college athletes, and I play rugby.
That's a good introduction. Nice and succinct, but you covered all the bases. Now, the first time we met in person was down in Austin, Texas for the first DPN Ambassador weekend. And I remember I was walking around the neighborhood where our Airbnb was. We were sharing an Airbnb, and you hadn't gotten there quite yet. So I was just doing laps around the neighborhood on the phone with my grandma. And I saw you from a distance. You saw me. We immediately recognized each other. And I said, Grandma, I got to call you back. And I hung up, and we met for the first time. And that weekend was so special. Everybody there just felt like they were friends who I just hadn't met ever in person. And that's where this friendship started. And so from there, I believe you were just married when that weekend happened, correct?
Literally a week post marriage.
So that was like your solo honeymoon.
My solo honeymoon was going to Ambassador Weekend. Zoe would have come. However, I had just quit my job the week before our wedding, and she had also just transitioned to a new job the week before our wedding. So she was not in a good position to make that trip.
Yeah, that's a lot of change all at once. Both switching careers just a bit and to get married, and then for one of you to travel and one of you not to travel. Can you take us back to the beginning of kind of where your and Zoe's relationship started? I love this kind of stuff. So when you guys met, was it love at first sight? Was there a little bit of warming up that needed to happen? What did that look like?
There was definitely some warming up that needed to happen. So, Zoe and I met freshman year of college. I actually transferred to UNE. I originally was at the University of Vermont, and that just was not the fit for me because I was immediately post like army training. So my brain was still kind of like really regimented and like looking for order, and your freshman year of college is anything but that, and especially UVM is a big, like, it's a party school and so it just didn't fit my vibe. So I transferred to UNE, and Zoe lived on the floor above me in our dorm, and the only reason that we were like acquaintances was because her not her new so like one of my friends, she had also transferred at the same time. She was like right next door, so like I was up on the third floor a lot, and I just so happened to be next to Zoe. She loves saying this, she really didn't like me at the time. I have a bold personality, and like going into a D3 school, I was just like, I can play these sports. And I was like, I'm gonna do this sport and I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna crush it all. And she's like, who is this chick? Like, who does she think she is? And so we kind of started like becoming a little bit better friends just because of the friend group that we shared. And finally, we both joined rugby at the same time. So all of our friends were like, it's club, like, let's try it. So we went for it. And then through rugby, we became like best friends. And then going into sophomore year, we were roommates. It always is how it starts with like same-sex couples. At least that, like, maybe it is for like heteronormative couples, but like they were roommates. And so we were both straight at the time too. So like we were both straight, we were roommates, and then both we admitted afterwards, but like probably maybe a month before we actually decided to start dating, I kind of had like these weird feelings, and like I was like, what's happening here? And I was like, this doesn't make any sense. And I was like, Zoe's just my friend. And then one day we I'll just say it, we soberly hooked up. And then after that we were both like, well, what do we do now? And we decided to give it a go. And then I think it's been 6 years now, and now we're married.
Wow.
So luckily, it was a good thing that we gave it a go.
Wow. Yeah. Well, two things there. One, my wife and I share a similar story in the fact that she didn't not like me at first, but I think I saw her in a way that she didn't see me in the beginning. And as we built a friendship, things started to evolve. And so I can empathize there. Two, you said at the time you guys were both straight. Did
Yeah.
you not know that you were interested in Zoe in the beginning? Like how did that unfold for both of you, right? Like I'm so curious.
Yeah, so it's definitely interesting. And like every person's journey is a little bit different because like you hear some people say like I was straight, but they would like they kind of admit that being like I like had girl crushes in the past or guy whatever it was, and like but they didn't think anything of it. That was not the case for either of us. So like we never really growing up were just like had these feelings and we were like suppressing them. It was just like I still am like very attracted to like both genders, and like so is she. And so when we when we decided to date, it was one of those weird things. Like I remember one particular day, it was Halloween. We had a rugby game, so like we got back super late and I was like, I don't want to go party. So we were just watching movies and we were just laying on the couch, and it got to the point where we were both like passed out basically, but we were like intertwined, and I was like, I don't wanna like this to stop. So at that moment I was kind of like, I think I might actually like her. And then she also kind of had the same thing. So when we decided to date, we were just like, what do we do here? Because
Yeah.
it was her first relationship ever. It was both of our first like same sex relationship. So we were just like, I guess we just kind of like take it day by day and just see what happens. And so it was a very like slow start. It's not like immediately when you just start dating someone, you're like all over them and like holding hands, all these things. Like we just didn't understand how to do that. So like the learning curve was there. It was real.
Yeah. Episode 27 and 45 of this podcast. I've had similar conversations, and I can even see through those two and this so far how different everybody's journey is.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating. And so I guess the next question that pops into my mind is, were all the people in your life accepting of that relationship and of that choice, or did you face resistance there?
Um, for the most part, my aunt is gay, and so like it wasn't weird for me. So like having someone in my life, and Zoe's family is super, they're kind of hippy dippy, so they're very accepting. And our all of our friends, our coach was super like great about it. The one relationship that I was nervous about was my mom,
Mm.
just because, and we've talked about it. So she we were came like I grew up Catholic, and so we like came from like a religious household. I wasn't like we weren't crazy religious though, so like it was never like something really big, but like there was a time where like my aunt got married and we didn't go to the wedding. And so that really stayed with me. And so I was extremely nervous to tell my mom because I was like, what's going to happen, especially because she's helping me through college, like all of these things, like, and one, the relationship, but like being that age, you think of all the repercussions. And so it's just like, so she was supportive, but it was hard for her to just come to terms with. And I can understand that though, because like as a parent, you probably have these ideas and these thoughts of what your child's life's going to look like. And then like this it changes. It's not like I never gave an inkling into what this was going to happen. So all of a sudden I just dropped this on her. She's like, oh. So like there was definitely tension there for a while, but we're fine now.
You have a really nice way of explaining things. I mean, it makes sense. And I don't know, the thing in there that kind of it sparked this for me. I just it's sad sometimes that the world can't be a more accepting place. And just, we're all so different. Like every single one of us, we each have different preferences. We each have quirks. We each have things we're excited about, that we're embarrassed about. We're all humans. And at the end of the day, I think if we can come together and support one another, even if we don't understand somebody else's decision, but they're not harming themselves or other people, I just think the world would be a better place. And so it's really, really nice to hear that your family and Zoe's family are supportive of you guys, because I know that's not always the case.
Yeah, and like I have friends who have not had as good of experiences as me, and like I feel for them because like I don't know, I truly don't know what I would have done if like she really disowned me, because it's just like so much of support came from her that it really would. And like I kind of pride myself on being like on my own or like being able to take care of myself, but in reality like I do need support from every like from my family and from my friends. And so she was a big support pillar at that time, and so it was like it was terrifying.
Yeah, I'm sure. So that sounds really hard, and might as well just ask you the first question of the podcast, first big one. What is the hardest circumstance in your life that you've ever had to handle? So something that you didn't necessarily choose for yourself, but something you had to handle.
I guess it's kind of self-chosen, but also it just kind of happened because like that's life. So a year into Zoe and I's relationship, we went through a really big rough patch, mainly because there was a lot of things happening, right? So we were approaching our 1 year anniversary. We didn't really understand like how like this relationship was getting serious. Like that's what like 1 year gets crazy and you're like, how is this actually happening? And so like we were both, she was extremely busy with school, and so our ability to kind of cope with school and a sport and a relationship, and we were still living together, and then like I don't recommend that. And so like that really wore on our relationship. And then I went through a bunch of like inner change because, and I think it was like, do you remember the app Tumblr?
I've never used it, but I know what it is. Yeah.
Don't recommend because it's like it can be so toxic. And
Mm.
like I found Tumblr, and so like when I was on there, I was just seeing like all these things and like stereotypes of like same-sex couples and things like that. And so like in my head, I was like just really confused, and I was like, is this who I am now? Like I don't know how to dress anymore. I don't really know how to act.
Mm.
I was just so lost. And so I resorted to drinking a lot. And then my I didn't have, I didn't have a drinking problem before that, but every time I did drink, I have a pretty addictive personality, and so it's just like I drank to excess, and that usually ended up with me getting sick. And so um it just got kind of worse and worse, and then I never was the type to just have a drink on the daily. It was just like having a drink at parties, but then it became more of a regular thing. And then like obviously that caused problems in our relationship. And as it got worse, I started to have suicidal thoughts. And so during that time, it was like not that I wanted to die or like not be alive. It was just like I wanted to get out of the pain that I was feeling because I didn't understand it and I didn't know how to deal with it. And I didn't really trust anyone, not even that trust them, but like I didn't feel comfortable telling them of what I was dealing with. So like that was a huge thing that I really had to overcome, and I really had to rely on Zoe, my rugby coach, my mom, and some of my friends from school to help get me out of that like negative place because it did end me up in the ended up in the hospital at one point. And so it was like it was not good. So that was definitely the hardest thing that I had to overcome.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, Jenny. I didn't know. And I'm just curious, as I imagine somebody out there has been, is going through, or might go through something similar. Could you tell us a little bit about how you ended up in the hospital? And was that the quote unquote rock bottom for you? Or did it get worse?
No, that was definitely rock bottom. I remember I had gotten in a fight with Zoe, I think, and um and it was just like I was just so angry and like just in general. And so I went into our room. I grabbed a straight up bottle of like Tito's vodka
Yeah.
and red Gatorade. And I biked. One, I started drinking already. And then I biked to the beach because UNE is on a beach. So it's literally like you can walk there. I biked under the influence. So I don't know how I didn't crash. Biked to the beach, left my bike there, and just like walked down the beach, just drinking and like just going on the sand. And eventually I walked far. I don't even know how far, but it was just gone. And like I looked at the water and I was like, I'm just gonna go in. And this is probably October, November in Maine, so it's freezing and I'm just in like sweats. And so I walk in the water and I get about waist deep and I was like not cold. And I was like, I'm like not feeling anything. This is awesome. And so then I just kept walking. I didn't walk further in, but I just kept walking along the beach, waist deep in water and like getting a little bit lower every now and then. And I got to this one point where if I wanted to keep walking, I had to actually like swim to the other side of the beach. And at that point, I just kind of looked at it and I just started like bawling because I was just like, what am I like doing? Like I don't know. And so I walked back to the beach, sat on the sand, and I somehow did not lose my phone in the water. And I like texted Zoe, basically being like, I'm sorry, I need help, and I don't know what to do. And so they luckily she still had my location like shared on my phone. So like, because I didn't know where I was, they were able to come. She, my coach, and two of my coaches were able to come and get me. They had to change me because I was in soaking wet water. And then they were driving me to the hospital. And on my way to the hospital, I was like trying to open the door to the car to just like roll out. Basically, just kind of being like, I don't know, just like to not feel again, which is what I felt in the water. And when I got to the hospital, I threw up instantly as soon as I opened the door. And then they brought me in. I didn't have to get my stomach pumped or anything like that, but like I had to stay there. The biggest reason why they kept me there for observation was, I guess, I don't remember this, when I was in the hospital room, they were like, asking me, they're like, why'd you get in the water? And I said, I just didn't want to feel anything anymore. So that was something that triggered them to be like, this is not like, we can't let you go because we don't know what's going to happen.
Did it get better from that point? And if so, what was the catalyst for the improvement?
Uh, it did. It was definitely slow improvements, and it was mainly like I felt extremely guilty to like put everyone through that, and I was like embarrassed. And I really just I had to go get my bike again because it was still at the beach. And so when I went and got my bike, I sat there and I really had to think. And I was just like, whatever is going on, like, I have to figure out, or else, like, it's not fair to everyone else to keep, like, having to, like, save me because I can't really save myself. At least that's what it felt like. And so I was like, I need help. And so from there, we found a really good therapist. She actually worked for the school and she had like her own therapy thing. So I went and started seeing her and she helped tremendously. And I had been to therapy in the past before, but like way back when I was like my parents got divorced or something like that. So like I already had like this thing in mind where I'm like, this is gonna be stupid, like it's not gonna help. But then like she was phenomenal and she like forced me to be like not so I was already introspective, but to be like introspective in the sense where it's like you're looking at all these things, but like it doesn't really reflect like what you want and how you're feeling. So like stop trying to like identify with those things and just like be Jenni. And I was like, I can do that. So like very slow, I stopped drinking. Well, I say that. I stopped like actually drinking. If someone was like, "Do you want to taste this?" I'd be like, "Sure," and I'd have a sip. But then like that only really wanted me to like have more. So like eventually, I think it's been a year and a half, 2 years that I have been like completely sober. So stopping drinking was a big thing.
That's awesome. As we record this episode, it's 6 days from 10 years from the last time I've had a drink. And I don't know. My life would be very different if I had alcohol in it. Like you, addictive personality. Like you, I think I used it to cover up a lot of things that I was feeling. And I think a lot of people can relate to that, if I'm being honest. And I've had many conversations on this podcast with my coaching clients, with friends, with patients, and people are hurting. And like it's not uncommon to hear stories like this from people you wouldn't expect it from. And to be honest, coming into this podcast, I didn't expect you to have that story. But I'm glad that you're here on the other side. And I'm curious why you're so willing to open up about it, because I would imagine that's still hard.
It's still hard, and for a while I was really embarrassed and ashamed of it, but especially working with high schoolers now, I see how important and valuable it is to talk about these things because even a member of the school community that I'm in, I think she had graduated last year, but she took her life this year. So it's just like this stuff is still affecting these kids, and so they need, and in my opinion, they need to see role models of people who were like through like went through it and they're like, hey, listen, like I also went through it and here I am. It's been 5 years. I haven't had a drink in 2 years. And so it's just like it can be really dark and it can be really bad, but like it gets really good.
I'm curious. You said that your therapist helps you realize that you needed to stop looking at the labels that the world had put around you and start essentially living from the inside out and being who Jenni wanted to be, not who Jenni thought the world wanted her to be. Who is Jenni? If you had to describe her in a couple words, what would you say?
Jenni is a carefree, goofy person who really will just do whatever the heck she wants and not really care if someone else approves.
Mm.
And she'll do it for her. Younger Jenni, like in height, and even like wait, like from probably elementary all the way till like college until it's kind of started happening, it was like I would be outgoing and outspoken because I thought that's what I had to do to be liked. And I thought that's what I had to do to like get the guy and do the like just be the person, like popular or whatever. And so now it's kind of transitioned into just I like being outspoken and I like doing things that are out of the ordinary and not normal. And I like being goofy even as I'm getting older because I'm like, why do I have to stop being like having fun? I was like, that doesn't make sense. So That's who Jenny is.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I love that. And it also made me think of something I've been realizing more and more in my life, which is I find confidence really attractive, not in a romantic sense, but attractive in a sense of like, I want to see more of that, or I want to be around that. And there are a few examples in my life, but I think a couple, recent ones. My wife and I saw Aladdin a few years ago, and I'm not a theater person. I was never involved in theater. I've never really seen plays, but we went on Broadway, and I was mesmerized at how attractive the production was because everybody was so good at what they did. And while I would be absolutely embarrassed to go out on stage and dance and sing in front of people because that's not something that my type A personality has allowed me to do just yet, is just loosen up and just dance and sing. I was so drawn to that because they were just being so authentically themselves. That's what they wanted to do, and they were so good at it. And I think when people can break out of the mold of what they think society wants them to be, they automatically become a little bit more authentic and a little bit more attractive. And I think even if people can't put words to that, I think that's something a lot of people understand and feel when they see it, but it's really hard to be it, if that makes sense.
No, for sure. One of it resonated me. One of my high school coaches, she was probably one of the best coaches I've ever had. When I was like a freshman, it was very obvious that I was like nervous, and she looked at me and was like, "You got to fake it till you make it." And so I think in a good way and a bad way that really stuck with me because like even when I was in bad times, I was like faking it because I was like, I will get out of these bad times, but it allowed me to practice like having confidence and practice being like those people skills because I was like, this is what successful people do. And I was like, this is what like the person Jenny wants to be. Like, I have to do this. So I have to act like I am this person. And so, like, doing that got me to here. And then, like, when you see someone with confidence, I tell my kids this all the time because I make them do goofy things. Like we play games, we race, we do all these things, and I'm just like, what's more embarrassing? Watching someone try and like kind of mess up or just like fail, or see the person like not try and you can tell they're not trying and you're just like, ooh, this is like cringy. Like, why don't you just send it? Because we're all sending it. And so like that's another I use send it a lot. It's my big phrase.
Mm. Send it. I love that. That's gonna be the title of this episode. Send it. Um, a couple things you said there. One was practice confidence. I do believe that we can practice confidence. I think confidence is a skill, just like every other thing that we can be. We can practice confidence by faking it until we make it, or as someone once put it to me, believing it until we become it. And I think back to when I was a kid, I used to hate having to talk to adults as a kid. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it's just me, but I just could not stand it. I was so shy and so afraid and so timid. And my dad would always encourage me, Joe, look them in the eye and shake their hand. I'm a 6-year-old kid and I'm not about it. And eventually I got over that and I started doing it and I realized it wasn't that bad. And now as an adult, hoping to be a father someday, I would be so proud if I had a 6-year-old kid who shook an adult's hand and looked them in the eye. And I feel like that confidence was a skill for me. It was something I practiced and I had that external push, which I do think is important. And now it's something I admire. So I like that. Practice confidence, send it.
Yes.
So Jenny, next question. That was something hard that more or less was a circumstance that you found yourself in. What is the hardest thing that you've ever done on purpose, and why have you done that thing?
Let's see. I guess you could probably say joining the army was pretty hard. And just like everything that encompasses that, other than like the daily suffering through like training and stuff like that. But when I joined the army, I joined the National Guard, the Vermont National Guard, and I was actually 17, so my mom had to sign the permission slip like to allow me to join. But I was a senior in high school. I had already decided like I was going to go to Bloomsburg University in Pennsylvania and I was going to study criminal justice. And then one day, a family friend who was like the chief of fire department or something, he was like, you don't want a criminal justice major because like that's not what they're looking for. Everything's going cyber now. So you want like a cyber degree or a tech degree, which is true. But
Mhm.
like I hated anything to do with technology. It's still not my fave. And so I kind of panicked and I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. You just kind of blew up my whole life plan in just saying like 3 words. And I was like spiraling. And then I was already interested in law enforcement because I was doing criminal justice. And I did a school project on resources that should be offered to high school seniors other than college. Like, so I did a big presentation on how we should do more like career days from like a military standpoint or first responders and things like that to show like, hey, you don't just have to go to college, like you can also do all these other things. And so through doing that, I learned a lot more about the National Guard, and I was like, hey, that's not so bad. And I joined. I was a helicopter mechanic, and so I went to Fort Jackson, which is I think in South Carolina, North Carolina, one of the Carolinas, for 10 weeks for basic training. Came home for Christmas, and then I went to Fort Eustis, Virginia, for my job training, and that was 16 weeks. So that was definitely the hardest thing that I willingly put myself through.
Hmm. Helicopter mechanic. I also did not know that about you.
It was like
But
airframe, so like sheet metal stuff. Like asking me about the engine, I have no idea. I just like Rosie the Riveter, that was the joke. I was like Rosie the Riveter.
hey, it's all important, right? All those parts have to work together.
Yeah.
So all right, so you're there, right? Now, knowing your story, or at least the part of your story you already told us, you ended up in college. So what was the path from that point once you're working on the helicopters?
When I was in my job training at Fort Eustis, I was about halfway through, and so this was I graduated April, January, February, March, so maybe around like March area. I was like, I know if I don't apply to school, like I'm just gonna go home. I don't know what, like I won't go to school. Like I don't know what I'll do if I don't. And so I wanted something to kind of keep me on track for like lack of a better words for like keeping to move forward in life. And so that's when I applied to UVM and I was undecided. And when I got to UVM, I was thinking about what to do. And I had been awarded like this thing senior year, it was like the engineering award. And so I was like, I guess I'll go engineering. So I went from undecided to having an engineering degree and I hated it so much. Like even just the intro class, I was like, this sucks. It was just sitting a lot in front of a computer, like
Mhm.
really trying to like make a circle. And it was the hardest thing ever. And I was like, I can't do this. And when I transferred to the University of New England, I was an animal behavior major. So I was like, I really like animals. Maybe I can become a vet. Like that would be a cool like pre-track. I can do all that stuff. And it was fun, but they did a lot of research and I was like, okay, like I'm not really into that. Not really my thing. And also I had to pass chemistry and I couldn't pass chemistry for the life of me. So then I stayed at UNE, changed my major yet again to exercise science, and that is where I stayed.
Got it. Wow. So quite a few changes there. And I think it probably highlights something that resonates with anybody who's went to college or not, which is you really don't have any idea what you're doing. And that's most people, right? Myself included. And I think that's a very normal thing. And it's hard because the societal norm is you go to high school, you go to college, you pick a major, you get a job in that major, most likely, but that's just not how it seems to work. More and more, it's people go to school for one thing, they switch majors a couple times, get out of school, and then change paths yet again. And I think it's really a shame that we force people down these paths and try to fit them into these boxes that we make as a society. Because the truth is, I think we're all pretty much figuring it out until the day we die, or at least that's my guess. And I'll figure it out maybe when I'm older, if that's right or not. But so you graduate college, you start working, I'm assuming. Where are you working at that point?
So I had done an internship at, I bet you probably just heard my dog shake. That was his collar.
Yeah.
I done an internship the semester before I graduated at a gym like 30 minutes from where I live now, and it was about an hour from school. And so they offered me a job like to because I did a like a fifth year. So because I transferred and changed majors, that I was like off track to graduate with everyone else in my class by only like two classes. So they offered me a job while I was finishing up my classes, and I stayed there and I worked there, and I did that. So I guess I was there for maybe a year and a half ish, 2 years almost. And then, like I said, I left that job a week before my wedding, mainly because I really wanted to work with high schoolers and like in the capacity that I couldn't do there for a lot of reasons, but the two biggest reasons that I can think of is one, I think it just like was too far away from my house and like my community was like developing here in like Yarmouth and North Yarmouth. And then two, I didn't really know how to build a program. And then this guy came in who I actually went to school with, and he took over and he started like instant like growth. And I was like, what the heck? Are you kidding me? Like I've been doing this for so like I've been trying so hard, and it was just bad for like my mental health. So I was like, I can't be in this like area. I love the team, I love the gym, but I was like, bye, I gotta go.
Yeah. And so at that point, did you start your own thing? Did you take another job? What did that transition look like?
Kind of both. So I had already been coaching a few CrossFit classes in like the town next to me in Yarmouth. And because I feel like that's the life of a personal trainer, right? Like you have a few classes here at one gym and then you go over to another gym because you're just trying to make it work when you first start out. And so I was already coaching a few classes there. And so I was like, maybe I'll do my own personal training clients at the gym. And maybe I can start like a middle school and a high school program at CrossFit Yarmouth. And so I pitched that idea to the owners, and they were like, "We love it. We love you." Like they literally like asked me to coach CrossFit after only going for 1 day a week for like 2 months. They
Wow.
were like, "We know you're a coach. Like you know the movements. We want you to coach." So I was like, "Okay." And so I had that. Two of my personal training clients from my previous gym came with me, and so I kind of had that base. So it was a hybrid of working with the adult classes, my personal training clients, and then building the high school and the middle school program.
Yeah, what you said is so true. You piece it together when you first start, and I'm guessing the same for a lot of other professions when you start your own thing and it's a service-based business where you're serving clients. And I still drive around with two kettlebells, a medicine ball, some resistance bands in the back of my car. And if I can make a session work at a local park and it fits right into my schedule, I do it. Right. And that is the life of a personal trainer. That is the life of someone who is starting their own thing and trying to make it work. And it's a hustle and it's a grind and it's hard. And it's also rewarding when you get a taste of ownership and you realize this is my own thing. These are my clients. This is my life that I'm taking control of. That's really empowering. And it's awesome to hear that you're taking that transition and it looks different for everybody, but it sounds like it's a good fit for you where you're at right now.
Yeah, it was really scary and like it was a slow start, which was even more scary because like I only had two personal training clients. And so it's like I was still kind of building this community. So I was like cold calls left and right, trying to get people to join. And like I was really focused on the youth population. So I was like getting kids in. The middle school group popped off. Like I had upwards of 10 to 15 kids in there for a while it was boys on Mondays and Wednesdays and girls on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So like it was popping. And then the high school group that grew better because I like marketed it as like sports specific in the preseason. And so that kind of took over a lot. And then the job opened up at the high school, which was originally just a weight room monitor position. So you come in, you open the weight room, and you just sit there. Like you're there as a resource. And I was like, okay, I want to change that position and I want to be the strength coach. It sounds like just a title, but it means so much more. So now I open up the gym, and if there's no teams in there, like anyone can come and use it, but I program for kids. And so if they want to do their own thing, they can do their own thing, or they can do it with me. And I work with all of the teams. So I have a schedule where, like tonight, for example, Nordic came in and they had an hour block where they came in and I worked with them. So, like, it was definitely a slow grind at first. And so you're just like pushing through and you're like, God, this, like, I have to make this work or else, like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. So it's like not for everyone. And I definitely respect those who don't do it because the stress sometimes it's just like, I don't know, man. This is wild.
You know what I'll say? Well, a few things. One, it sounds like you asked for what you wanted. And I think asking for things is an underrated skill because if you don't ask, the answer is always no. And odds are, if you are proposing a good idea, if you're asking a genuine question and trying to add value, and the other person on the other end is reasonable and somewhat receptive, you could usually make it work. And that's what you've done multiple times, it sounds like. And you've positioned yourself now in a place that's better for you. And the other thing is, I remember being in the clinic and feeling stressed that my life was not moving in the direction I wanted it to. And I know so many other people, clients, friends, podcast guests, who have expressed a similar stress. And the stress is, I'm not satisfied. I'm not fulfilled. I'm not happy with where I'm at. And now, on the other side of my life decision to leave my job and pursue entrepreneurship full time, I don't feel that stress anymore, almost at all. I feel very fulfilled and there's a lot of meaning every single day. And like you said, there's a different stress. It's the stress of, if this client cancels, that's on me, right? If this contract with this group doesn't work out, that's on me. Like I eat that. There's no paycheck coming in if I don't make this work. And that stress is definitely not for everybody.
Yeah, I I don't recommend entrepreneurship. I don't even know if that's the word, but like unless you're like really in it and in love with what you do, like there's nothing wrong with getting a comfy job that you can kind of progress at. Because like there were definitely times when I first started, like I took a basketball referee course because I was like, Zoe, I don't know how I'm gonna help with these bills. Like I was feeling guilty. So
Mhm.
luckily I didn't have to rely on that because things started to take off. But yeah, it's hard. But like you said, it is very fulfilling. And there are specific moments like when because I do work with a few adult clients, and so one in particular, his name's Kevin. He like almost every time he comes in, he's an older guy. He's just like, Jenni, you'd have no idea how much this is transferring over into my regular life. He's like, skiing this weekend was so much easier than like it was in the past. Like I didn't have to go in like as many times to take a rest. And then even seeing like I love that and I love working with my high schoolers when like they get their first chin up or like things like that. But I'm mainly excited, especially with the athletes, where it's like, I'm like, okay, but do you feel stronger on the field? And they're like, oh yeah, I'm not getting like bumped around as much. And I'm like, because that's what we want. I'm like, that's where I like really love about coaching is like the athletes and being like, I love getting you strong in the weight room and I love getting you faster, but like, are you faster in the sport? Are you stronger in the sport? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, that's a big win. I love those times.
Yeah, celebrating those wins with clients, athletes, etc., is so rewarding, especially when it transfers over to the things that they care the most about. It's just really meaningful work. And so, obviously, this is the Project Endure podcast. I'm going to ask you a question in a second that is super simple, and everybody has a different take on it. But, Jenni, when you hear the word endurance, what does that mean to you?
So I don't know if he told you, Joe, but when I originally tried to book this time to like do your interview, I had to get out of it because of this question because I was like sitting there and I was just like, I'm such a literal person that I was literally gonna just like write the definition of what endure meant. And I was just like, I'm like, no, Jenny, you can't do that. And I was like, but that it I'm like, oh, so I really had to think about this. But because I'm so literal, I think it is what it is the definition. It's the ability to withstand hard and difficult times and come out on the other side. And so I think you can take that from like a mental strength, mental toughness attitude, a physical thing where it's just like you're able to just kind of embrace it and be like, this is sucking, embrace the suck and be like, this is sucking right now, it's okay. I'm just going to keep doing the things that I know will get me to the other side. So I would say that's what I think endure means to me.
Yeah, there's no right or wrong, and there's nothing wrong with literal. I think that's a great definition. And it reminds me of one of my favorite quotes. It is on the Project Endure website, and I'm guessing that it'll always live there in some form. It is from Haruki Murakami, and he said, "And once the storm is over, you won't remember how you made it through, how you managed to survive. You won't even be sure whether the storm is really over. But one thing is certain, when you come out of the storm, you won't be the same person who walked in. That's what the storm is all about." Like that's endurance, right? Like how do you withstand the storm? How do you trust that it's going to get better? And even if it doesn't get better anytime soon, how do you trust that it's worth it, that you'll be better for it, that you'll be stronger for it? Right. I think that's a great definition of endurance. So I appreciate it.
To a T. And I think I keep referring to them because there's so many good things, but with my high schoolers, like I tell them this and they're like, "How do you know?" And I'm just like, "Because I'm living it, man." I'm just like, this is one of those moments where you really just have to like you have to put trust into someone and just be like, this person who went through something hard said that it gets better, so it must get better. And like you just have to believe that because if you think that it's never going to get better, it won't because you're always going to be looking at it from a negative light. And like if you don't grow from that, I don't really think you were paying attention to like what was actually happening.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think our perspective has so much to do with who we become. And the same two people can go through the same exact life events and choose two different perspectives and become two different people. And I think it was Henry David Thoreau who once said, "It's not what you look at that matters, it's what you see." And that's what perspective is. It's seeing a hard, maybe even on the surface, objectively bad situation and choosing to find the good, to find the silver lining, to find strength in struggle, to find growth in adversity, to find resilience in resistance, right? Like that is perspective, and perspective is a choice. And it's clear that you've chosen that. And it's clear that you're helping other people choose that. And I couldn't ask for a better message or a better person on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe. I've been bugging you for a while to get on this thing, so now I'm on.
Now you're on, and we are not done yet. We have my favorite question, the final question of the podcast. And as we both alluded to, there are people out there listening who are going through hard things. Maybe it's a dark season of life. Maybe they are not sure where to go or what to do or who to turn to, even. And they're listening right now. And in a second, you'll have the opportunity to just speak to them and say whatever you want. But if somebody's struggling out there, Jenni, listening to this right now, and you're in their ear, what would you say to them?
I would probably say stop overthinking, stop caring what other people are thinking, and just do what you want. Because just do what you want because far too we spend too much time doing things that we don't want to do. And don't get me wrong, there's times when you have to do stuff you don't want to do. But it's just like you have to do what you want and what's going to make you happy. And like the people who are going to support you, like you'll find them and they'll find you. And the people that aren't there to support you, just like that job I left, peace. Like it's not that easy, but like if they're not there for you, they're not for you. And like it's a really hard thing to come to terms with, especially if it's family, and if it's friends, like I've dropped friends, I've dropped family, and like, which is hard, but it's like if you're on a path and you want better for yourself and they are not there, like don't do it. They're just dragging. And so do what you want, even though it's hard, and then you'll find a community that will be there to support you.
Yeah, I'm trying to find this quote that I want to share because I think it ties into what you just said. It's from Martin Niemöller, who I believe was speaking after the Holocaust on this, or potentially during the Holocaust. But Martin Niemöller said, "First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me." And I think it's really powerful, right? You got to stand up for yourself. You have to look out for yourself. You have to do what's right, and you have to be you. You have to be authentic. You have to live from the inside out, because if you don't, the world will tell you who you are from the outside in. And we only get to do this once. And it's so clear that you've chosen to live from the inside out. And I think your message is really going to resonate with a lot of people, Jenni. And I'm thankful to know you as a friend. I'm thankful for this conversation. And I can't wait to see what you do next, which, by the way, do you have any big plans in the future? Are there any exciting things on the horizon?
So, I wasn't telling anyone about this, and then BPN did the whole like prove yourself right thing, and I was like, well, now I'm telling people about it. So I was like, it adds stress. Like, I don't really like telling people my goals because then it like
Mm.
stresses me out. But I've already said it to the world. On March 12th, I have a rugby tryout for like this. It's called the PR7s, and I think they did it for the first year, like last year. And essentially, the country is broken up into like eight like categories, eight segments. And so like there's a Northeast team, a Southeast team, like things like that. And so I'm going to DC on the 12th for that tryout to be a part of the Northeast team. So like that is the biggest thing on the horizon for me.
Wow. And if you were to make that team, does that team play within the United States? Does it ever go outside of the United States? What does that look like?
So it's in the US, and so over the course of like the summer we'll go to different tournaments because sevens is different than 15s, and so it's only 14-minute games, so you can play multiple in a weekend or in a day. So there will be a few tournaments throughout the summer, and then depending on how you do in each tournament, kind of seeds you for the next one. And then there's like a championship, and you try to win the championship. So if I make this team, which is a big if, because like I don't know, and this is a tough thing about rugby too, especially in the Northeast. Like there's not a lot of people who play, so I don't know what the talent is going to be like. So I have no frame of reference to be like, where am I? So it'll be good no matter what happens. It'll be a good opportunity for me to kind of compare myself to other semi-pro rugby players trying to make it and be like, where am I? Because like if I can take it to the next level, I'm gonna do it. But if I go there and I'm like, ay, like it's like too much time and I'm aging out, and so it's not like it's gonna be a big deciding factor in the future for me. So I'm really excited for it.
Yeah. Well, hey, we'll be rooting for you. And I have one piece of advice, which is just to send it, which is really just your advice.
It is my advice. I'm just gonna send it.
That's all you can do. Well, Jenni, if this conversation, if your story resonated with people and they want to learn more about what you've got going on, if they want to follow along, they want to reach out and connect, where's the best place for them to do that?
Probably on Instagram. I am at the underscore Gainster, and that's GAINZTER. I made that in college. It is stuck with me.
I love it. I think you should keep it. It will be linked down in the description for this episode. And Jenni, just thank you again so much for this, for everything, for sharing your story, especially.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate you having me on. I loved it. I love talking to you.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Project Indoor podcast, go ahead and subscribe, leave a review on your platform of choice, and share this episode with a friend. It helps us get more conversations like this out to more people like you. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time. And one more thing. If you're looking for a community of people all striving to be better together, check out the Project Indoor Hard Things Club. The link is in the description below. We'd love to have you.